Hey guys, what's up? Alright. It's Double Deuce back. Today's segment's going to be on going back to the evolution of the original Bruiser, which you see here, and the HG-P407, which you see here. And I'm going to go over today. I've had some questions on guys that are restoring the old Bruisers, and I'm going to go over the wheels first. And because the one problem that's pegged these trucks from day one was there's very few wheels and rims for these things, okay? So I'm going to go over what I did through the years and what's available now for the HG-P407. And if you got an old school Bruiser, you know, the wheel hubs are basically almost the same. So I'm going to go over, I'm going to start with the hubs first, which we have a bunch of hubs here, okay? Now, first off, I'm going to get to the original Bruiser here had one-way hubs on the front, okay? Now, these are the original first release Tamiya Bruiser hubs. Now inside here, I'll see if I can get I'll use the back rear end for a comparison. I don't know if these are still locked up or not, but that one's probably setting for so long they need greased. What it is, they only turn one way, okay? And I think this one still does it here. When you turn it backwards, it locks. It locks, okay? It free rolls forward, but when it goes backward, you see how it stops? That way when the drive shaft turns the axle shaft in there, that one-way bearing comes out and catches it and lets it roll forward. Now they did that for the simple reason of steerability, so the thing would steer. I don't know if I got that on camera or not, so I'll do it again. But rolls forward freely, but when you roll it back, it locks. Okay, now, anyways, back to this. They did that because of the steering problems that these things had, okay? And the reason why the old tires, I'll get to that in a minute, were so hard and had a line down the center, I'll tell you. So this is what I discovered through the years, okay? Now these are your earlier hubs. You can see they got a big, huge face on them, okay? And in the back, they got basically these are skateboard bearings, okay? And the number on them is, no, there's no number on this one. Makes you know these numbers by heart. But they're all aftermarket stuff nowadays. These were the original bearings that went in here in the back. Okay, the reason they had this bearing was simply because you had an axle shaft sticking out here, okay, and then you had like a small hub here that the bearing rode on. And what this did was it gave it support. So when you hit something, this here would support the axle shaft so you didn't bend or snap off an axle. That's why they come up with that on these things. And it worked great. I mean, the only problem is it was a one-off. You know, it was hard to find wheels and tires for these things. Tires, I mean rims. You couldn't find rims for them. I ended up buying a set of rims here. You can see these things are really old. They got the MX Road Dog on them there, but they're just a aluminum tube basically with a center like welded in it. And you know, there wasn't much choice for rims back then. And I like aluminum stuff. And you know, this here is the original Bruiser rim, You see the back there? It's like a 3-bolt flange on these things, okay? Now this carries right up to the HG-P407. These are the HG-P407 hubs here. But what they did was, they made a smaller bearing in the back that they used on the second release Bruiser. Let me see. These are hubs from the second release Bruiser. Okay. Now your Mountaineer and your Tamiya Bruiser were basically the same, you know, suspension, body, transmission, rear ends, and everything. I believe the only thing they changed at that point in time, don't quote me on it, was they got rid of the one-way bearings. Now you can see this bearing here, it has a plastic filler in there to take up the space that used to be the big bearing. You see? So, the old versus the new, the HG-P407 has a very small hub on here. Now, the earlier release Bruisers had a gigantic hub. Now, you can see I put marks on there to drill holes so I could run the RC four-wheel drive 2.2 wheels and mount them right up to it. That was a popular thing to do. You didn't use the 12mm backing plate, you just mounted them right up to these. They've done that through the years. Now, what I tried to do on the HG-P407 was I tried to make a 12mm hex. And as you can see, I started making the hex, but the problem is it's hollow in behind it. So when you start filing it down to put a hex on there so you can run a 12mm tire on there, it's just going to break off. There's nothing you can do with it. And there's a lot of complications when it comes to changing wheels and tires. Now, one alternative was they sell these now. Okay, this bolts right to your. This is the HG-P407. You know, got the small hole in it. These bolt right to your existing hub. Okay, and you can have a 12mm hex on it. But the problem is, if you look at it, it puts it out about almost an inch. So it looks kind of goofy when you know, the wheels are sticking way outside. So you got to find, I guess, a wheel that would, you know, work with it. So what I'm going to do, I'll show you just how crazy this is. Okay, I'm going to put this hub in here. Okay, there is the original hub on the original Bruiser. You can see it sits in there, you know, quite a ways, so it lets the wheel set inwards towards the truck. Now, these here, when you put them on a regular 12mm wheel, they stick way out. I mean, it looks goofy. It gives you, you know, a lot of ground clearance. So what I did was, I searched for a wheel and tire combination that would work a little bit better with these things, and I come up with I believe these are the Pro-Line Trencher, but these are the Super Swamper version of it. Now when you put these on there, they do stick out of the wheel well, but the tire's kind of wide and it kind of fills up the space, and it doesn't look as goofy. Now, I actually made these things here. I'm in the middle of making them now. So what this will do, you have the existing HG-P407 bearing, you put it on there, and then you slide this in like so. Now I can run a 12mm hex, and I can still use the bearing so I don't bend the axle. And Now, another thing about these earlier things, they had a 3mm nut on here, okay? And all the other standardized axles have a 4mm. So if you're trying to get into scale, okay, say you wanted to run the RC four-wheel drive Yoda hubs, lockout hubs here. You see what I'm saying? Let's find it here. Okay, you want to run these. The problem is they have a 4mm nut back here, and they don't fit this at all. So these early axles here are the same as the second release, basically, as far as the wheel hubs. They did change, you know, your center section and put a differential in them. And, you know, you really didn't have many options, okay? Because it had a differential, which was lockable, which was cool. You could help steer the front. And so through the years, they say these are original axles here. What I just recently did was I got online here, and there was a kid had a program to print off with your 3D printer 12mm hexes that slid over it. It had a slot in them that you could put a 12mm hex wheel on there, and you could put a washer on there to lock the wheel on it, so you could still use it. Now, you know, there's been other alternative axles for these things too over the years, and when they come out with the Toyota High Lift, I never bought one because it just wasn't the Bruiser. It was, you know, it was plastic and all that. And when they released the Bruiser again, I really wasn't too interested in the motor and transmission on the truck because the gears were plastic in them. But when the HG-P407 came out, now the gears and stuff in here they're all metal gears in it. They're not super strong, but they're stronger than the original Tamiya pot metal gears. Now, RC Channel, they have rear ends, okay? They're a nice rear end. They're about 150 bucks for a pair. And the only problem is the width of the HG-P407 rear end and the Bruiser, where their leaf spring mounts are, they don't line up. So I had to make plates on mine out of aluminum to slide them in underneath the leaf springs to make them work, which was a disaster because, you know, they do take a lot of abuse. And so the whole moral of the story is I was searching for a pair of rear ends. So I got online, RC four-wheel drive, and they had, I think these are the K44 ARB edition axles, which is cool. And they fit directly on the Tamiya High Lift, you know, Bruiser and the, you know, F350. However, they still don't fit the HG-P407. So changing the axles in the truck would basically solve the wheel problem for the adapters and all that. That way here you can run a 12mm hex on here, and being there's pins in behind the hexes, you could basically run any Tamiya wheel or any other kind of wheel that just had a pin instead of a hex. So what I did was I searched around, because these are about 180 bucks a piece through RC four-wheel drive. All right, well, I got on eBay. Now, I don't know if it's the same company that makes them for RC four-wheel drive or if it's just a rip-off, you know, like the HG-P407. They were $99 a pair, so I bought them. This is how they came. You know, they have the steering, all that stuff on them and everything. So what I did was I took, this is a Bruiser frame, okay, with the leaf springs, and you can see the width there. right here beside the shock thing, I just took and filed it flat right here. So this will set on there just like that without kicking. All right, and then I can put my clamps and my shock adapters on it and use the ARB style rear ends in the Bruiser. So that's an option. Okay, basically any axle that has room, you know, to file down the flat on it here, and you can clamp them to the leaf springs, you can use. You know, I mean, some of the prices, you know, RC four-wheel drive are getting out of hand here. You know, it's turned in from, you know, a little hobby thing to an exotic thing. For instance, this body here, it's about $170 just for the body through RC four-wheel drive. And I had to laugh because when I got the body, these were on special at Christmas time for $80. So I bought one. And unfortunately, I already bought another body, just a plain body, that was, I think it was $139 or $149 or something like that for the body. And then these were on special, so I bought that one too. And when I opened the box up, there was some paperwork in there from the company that RC four-wheel drive commissioned to do these in China, and it says RC car body, $69. So, you know, they're making a clean $100 a body on these things if that's the case, which to me, I mean, you know, this is where the hobby goes bad. You know, this is where greed steps into the hobby and ruins everything. And, you know, that's always bothered me through the years. And the non-sharing of information, and, you know, it's a hobby. And it's a learning process. And, you know, like the mind's endless. Let's keep it going. Let's keep the hobby going. Let's not chase people out of the hobby because of, you know, pricing. That's just ridiculous. And it's more like the, you know, the big penis syndrome here, you know, where I got this and you don't, you know, which is, I don't believe in that. It's really not cool. And so getting back to this, I don't want to get off on my rant. RC four-wheel drive, again, all right, they have, if you have a HG-P407 and you don't want to, you just want to leave everything be, and you like to put some really nice beadlock wheels on it, these here, I'll open them up here. RC four-wheel drive sells these. Okay, now these take the big skateboard style bearing here, all right, in the back, or you can take out the adapter, the plastic adapter, which is a bitch to get out because they're really in there, and you can use the smaller bearing in there too if you want. Now you see they actually have a slot machined in there because that's how you put it on. It has a really nice center cap, and they are a true front and rear beadlock wheel. Now these are, I believe, around $130 plus shipping for all four, which to me, for a really nice high quality wheel, is a good bargain. And if you want to see what they look like on the Bruiser, I will grab this one. Now I put these on. This is the re-release Bruiser, and if you want to see what they look like, move some stuff here. Now that's what they look like on the re-release Bruiser. And the cool thing is, they're staggered. The fronts and the rears are staggered, so the wheelbase is the same now. It's not in on the front, okay? Here's the drawback. When you use a nice tire, now I didn't put no foams in these because I use this as a plow truck, and I need the grip. And when you don't put foams in them, this is where the steering problem comes in I was talking about earlier. Okay, I'm going to go over that right now. Now the original Bruiser wheel, okay, this is an original Bruiser first release wheel. You see the line in the center here, okay? And the tire is really stiff. The reason is because of that flunky steering setup they had in these things with the rod, you know, coming out of the box in the back, and there was so much give in this. Even this here with these road dogs on here had trouble turning because there's too much surface area, and when you get it into a high friction, you know, atmosphere, the servo wants to turn it, but it ain't turning. Where the reason they designed these tires so hard, okay, is because if you look, it rides just on the very center, which is, there's very little resistance in turning, you see. And you get a bigger wheel like this, now your surface area is a lot wider. There's going to be a lot of resistance on turning this wheel once you get weight on it, because it's soft. It's going to flex down, and it's going to be like pushing a trash can with a garden hose from your servo. It's just going to wiggle up on you and flex and all that stuff. So that's why, excuse me, that's why the original Bruiser wheels were so hard. Now the HG-P407 wheel, it's a one-piece rim, okay, and the wheel's a little softer, but it still has that the way it rides in the center. You see, so there's very little turn. And why, when they decided to, excuse me, when they decided to clone this truck, you know, if they really wanted to be superheroes, they could have fixed two of the basic problems on here. One is the wheel adapters to make them fit a 12 millimeter too, which can be done because there's a place out there called RC Channel that sells, you know, disc brake and drum brake wheel adapters, kind of like this style here, but they don't have the flange on them. The disc brake has just a round disc on it, and the drum brake just has fins in it, and it's got the bearing in the back that slides over it, and it has the holes in it right here where you can mount their rim or any 2.2 style wheel on there. I guess it's a 1.9 and 2.2 have the same bolt pattern. So for you scale guys, you could still go down to the 1.9s if you want, and the monster truck guys, you know, you want to go up to 2.2, that's cool. So, and you know, the other problem is they should have fixed the steering on the thing to make it, you know, I guess more user friendly, because, you know, it's easy to say, hey, I'm gonna like clone this truck, but there was a lot of work for them to do it. And you would have thought that in the meantime, they do have other cars that they sell, that they would have used some of their other ideas, like the, you know, like I say, the wheel hub axle things and the steering nightmare that's on there. It's cool the way the steering works, but a lot of guys have done this. You know, I printed this off. It's just a servo mount in the front here. They put the servo into here, and changing the steering from the back of the truck to the front actually helps it steer better. And when you hit something with it, it'll actually let the wheels turn and pull the other wheel. When it's in the back and you hit something, it pushes the other wheel, and that's where you start breaking off steering knuckles. And so note to self, if you want to, you know, kind of do an upgrade on your HG-P407, tear it apart, make it steer in the front. Even if you use the original thing here, okay, you can still, this one here, I did it, it steers in the front, okay, but the arm is still in the back. You just switch the arm from one side to the other, and it works fine. Now, yeah, so my next project, or video, is going to be on the differences in the transmissions. So that'll be an upcoming video I'm going to do soon, but I got to tear one apart because I want you guys to see the internals of it, how it works. And you know, there's a lot of used transmissions out there, and there's a lot of people restoring these early trucks, and you know, you want to restore a truck right back to the way it was, you know, right with the box art and right out of the, like the factory things, that's cool. But you're dealing with used transmissions, and some of these transmissions are shot up to all, you know, the transmission was like $200 when it was brand new to replace it. Now your used ones are like $175. And I'm getting a lot of information that, you know, these people are buying these used transmissions online and the slipper clutches are gone in them. So I got a quick fix for the slipper clutch that one of my followers there had the same problem. And so I'll go over that on my next video. So any questions, comments, like, share, subscribe. The Blazer in the background, that is an HG-P407 chassis with a 3D printed motor and Scooby-Doo on the top. I don't know if you can want to check it out. So what I did, I just 3D printed an engine with headers and basically gutted out the center of it so it slid over top the can 540 motor. And the wheels and tires on this I 3D printed off. They were 1.9s and I brought them up to a 2.2, and I used the G-made tires that I bought with the rims you could blow up there, the G-Air wheels. They came with those, you know, tires, and of course I used the Super Swampers on my G-Airs. And in what I did here was this hub here, when I blew up the rim from a 1.9 to a 2.2, the hex grew. Okay, so I printed off some of these hexes here. That's why these are on this. And when I put them into 2.2s, they just swam around in there because the hex grew when I had cropped the rim to make it bigger. So I thought it was a real problem there, and I was kind of stumped. But then I realized that if I just blew up the scale hub, you know, the adapter that the kid had come up with, then I could put it right on there, and that's what I did, you know. Now I'm not running, you know, the support bearing on the back or nothing on these things. Just goes right over the axle. But the tires have enough give, you know, that I don't think it's going to bend any axles or break it off unless I really smoke something really hard. So anyways, guys, that's Bruiser School and Tamiya HG-P407 whatever School 101. Like, share, subscribe if you want, and I'll catch you later. Adios.